Good evening and welcome back to everybody. We are up to week number 3 of the Viktor Frankl Mind, Body, and Soul Trauma Healing Life Coaching Program. The first 2 weeks have been really just an introduction into how the body keeps the score, how trauma is embodied within sensation in the body. We looked at the model of the nervous system, prefrontal cortex, your thinking brain. Most of psychotherapy takes place right here. Psychotherapists are not trained to work what's back here, which are sensations in the body, feelings, sensations, and so on. And somatic work takes place here primarily. We saw last week as well that if this part of the brain is dysregulated, it kind of shuts down the higher regions of the brain. So you could be talking to somebody in trauma, but they're like a walking ghost. They're not really communicating with you because no one's helped them address these sensations that are happening within the nervous system. So the one who really taught us this work, I would perhaps say there are 3 great psychotherapists, or revolutionary psychotherapists in human history for the last 150 years. One is, of course, Sigmund Freud. Let's make them 4. You have Sigmund Freud. We all heard about Freud with all his complex problems he also had. You had Viktor Frankl, one of my mentors, conceptually. Then you had Aaron Beck. Aaron Beck is the founder of cognitive behavioral therapy. He saw, I think, the truth about human consciousness and distorted thinking and self-belief systems. And the 4th, I would say, really is Peter Levine. I could add one more in, Carl Rogers. We'll be learning about Carl Rogers today, the founder of the active listening movement or unconditional acceptance of clients. And Peter Levine would be the latest one in historical terms. And so Levine actually took all the psychotherapy and he brought it into the present, where we're now finally dealing with the unexplored territory of the body and sensations. Now, I have to mention that Levine really is kind of in his own world, so to speak. Therapists are not trained to work on a body level. Massage therapists, people that deal with the Feldenkrais method, I've worked on for many years personally, 30 years already. Few people are trained in the world of somatics. It's not even like a field of psychology people really study in depth. He's created a whole new field of psychology. Really integrates so much that's unspoken. And it's so powerful, my clients. You'll see why soon. So tonight we'll be learning about Peter Levine's work, what is somatic experiencing. We'll deal with this concept of expansion and contraction, helping clients feel safe. And then we're going to move into the 12 exercises to heal trauma. We'll look at something called the vagus nerve, the largest nerve in the body, and called the VU sound exercise. Now, we might not get to everything tonight, but we'll just continue it next week. We don't get there this week. So in Levine's work, there's 3 real stages that you have to understand, first of all, in treating people with trauma. One is the preparatory stage, it's kind of learning about them, getting them ready. Learning about them, getting them ready, preparing them to deal with sensations in the body. The second is the tracking of the skills. Once we get that down, we're going to track certain sensations and teach them how to move out of the sensations. The 3rd level is discharging activation, leftover parts of the nervous system, which are undischarged. Now we're going to have the opportunity to actually watch some of Levine work, people who are working with somebody tonight. I'll just show some short clips to kind of understand what he does and see the master himself do it. The tonic mobility, we saw that video last week. That's the state which a lot of people that have trauma experience, is that frozenness. So they've gone down the ladder from social engagement, having a good time, to fight or flight, running for their life, or being triggered by something, and then going deep down to the state of frozenness. So many clients we're working with, we're meeting them at that level. We have to teach them how to move out of that frozenness response. This is all taking place on the middle brain, most of this. In the middle of the brain, there's a little organ. We looked at it last week, very briefly, called the amygdala. The amygdala, a little organ at the back of the brain on both sides of the head. And the amygdala is always seeking out danger. It is, I would call it the psychological smoke detector. So when you walk into a room, you go into a train in Manhattan, you walk down the street, your amygdala is always seeking around you with the question, am I safe or am I unsafe? It's worried about your survival. It is, I would say, the seat, besides the neshama, the soul, I would say it's the real seat of existence, because if no one protects your life, God forbid one will die. So it really protects your life in general. Without that amygdala, the fire would run rampant in your body. There'd be no smoke detector to tell you there's something coming up that you have to be worried about. The amygdala actually happens faster than the conscious process. So you go back to that, looking at the brain again, front of the brain, the middle brain, the back of the brain. If we gave too much opportunity for the prefrontal cortex to process danger, we wouldn't be alive. I'll give you a perfect example. So it's winter and it's icy on the streets, and it's cold and it's dangerous outside, and you're driving on the highway at 55, 60 miles an hour, maybe 65 miles an hour, and you're going a little too quick for the snow, and there's a truck in front of you, and the truck slams on his brakes, and you're flying at that truck. You can hit it within a millisecond. So you probably don't say to yourself, I think there's a truck in front of me, and I better put my foot on the brake. We don't do that. There's not enough time. Thank God we have the amygdala, because the amygdala will tell us, without our conscious mind even working, unconsciously, let's say subconsciously, the danger is present, react immediately without thinking about it. If we didn't do that, you couldn't duck if somebody threw something at you. You don't have to you have no time to process. So I really think historically this comes from the jungle or our nomadic history, where human beings evolved in environments that were much more dangerous than we're living in our cities today. They were at, alert for tigers, lions, bears, snakes. Our ancestors were, hunters. They were farmers. They were people working out in the fields, and they had to be ready. And this is an historic reality that amygdala was developed. It was assumed it exists before we confronted animals, but it definitely got fine-tuned from our environment, and it developed in that fashion because we had to be ready for any type of immediate danger. Today, we have mass shootings, so of course we're back to that danger on some level, but we have accidents and we have crime and we have other types of things which we're always worried about getting hurt by somebody. So that's that amygdala. That actually protects us, keeps us alive. But you see, that amygdala is so powerful that it actually can cause lasting changes in one's instincts and sensations. So the amygdala is very appropriate for the jungle. It's very appropriate for a shooting. It's very appropriate for being in a car accident. But the truth is, it's not really effective once you're out of the car accident, not in the shooting zone, and out of danger. Now, all of you, I think, remember what it was like March 2020, when I had COVID moderately. Thank God I wasn't hospitalized, but I was quite sick. And all of us who have had it, have been in it, know about it, know how frightened we all were. If you remember March 2020, just after Purim, when it was coming, we knew it was coming, and it hit the West Coast, and it hit part of New York, and then Purim came, we're all celebrating, and we're just waiting for it to happen. And one day we get a call from the schools are closed, everybody home, work is shut down. That was a very frightening time. It wasn't frightening like a forest fire that you're trapped and surrounded by. It was frightening in a way where no one knew what was going to happen next. We're all going to die. Many people died, as we know. We got hit here like 2.5 years ago, March 2020 in Brooklyn. I mean, everybody was getting it. People were dying left and right. So that was a very frightening time. And my wife and I were talking about this recently. Our children were hearing sirens, because we live near a few hospitals here, every few minutes in March 2020. Sirens were coming constantly all night, people being taken to the hospital, and many people are dying in the hospital. So we were really in an intense state of fight or flight. You think our amygdala was really, you don't go to school anymore. You can barely go to the store anymore. You shouldn't leave your house anymore. Those initial few months. So we really were put into this fight or flight mechanism. But then think about what's happened since then. If you're living in certain areas, we're no longer in the extreme danger we were. Now there's vaccination, and now there's, people thought out how to deal with this better. People have gotten it already. So it's a little bit less intense in certain areas. And there was a time where we all stepped out of the house, like back into society. And it was very strange. I'm sure you agree with me on this. It was strange going back into the world after being shut down for months and months and months. So that feeling of it's strange to be in society. Those initial feelings, but our amygdala was still active at that point, hadn't settled, we hadn't regulated yet. So we're still left with those powerful sensations of the amygdala, even though the danger had somewhat passed. And we get stuck in them as well, as Levine shows. So a person really needs to learn how to expand and contract safely out of those sensations, to move out from that lower level of the ladder, which is the freeze mechanism, into some movement of fight or flight, then back into social integration. So that would be like coming out of the few months of COVID, March 2020. And I don't know where everybody lives. It could have been hit a year after that, in 2021, either way. Coming out from the frozenness of our homes is a great metaphor. And then kind of like dabbling and going out a little bit into society and doing some shopping. That's where we start expanding out of freeze, so to speak. And then eventually we got back into social engagement. We went to the park, we started driving around, people started flying again. It's a great metaphor to understand how trauma works on a very specific level for an individual. And that expansion contraction is something that our bodies naturally experience physiologically. The experience of movement in the body is quite present from an expansion contraction perspective. So heartbeat is in, out, contraction, expansion, inhaling and exhaling, contraction, expansion. When I speak to you, it's a form of a bit of fight or flight. I'm trying to present something a bit animated. So I'm speaking. And when you speak back, ask questions, I'll be listening. Do you understand? And we're always moving in some formula of a contraction followed by an expansion. The difference is in trauma, we stop expanding and contracting and go to freeze, less movement. So we're looking for to get into frozenness is to develop a pattern of expansion and contractions. We start moving again up that ladder, so to speak. And this is exactly what Levine is saying. So we take somebody that's traumatized. We cannot move them quickly into a state of movement again, because in frozenness, the metaphor I was given is like this. It's like if I take a rubber band, I pull it back really intensely, holding back from my life, so to speak. So if I let out that energy too much, it explodes into what he calls rage. So you'll see, people that were victimized in many societies can quickly go into a state of rage when they get triggered. There's no middle ground between frozenness and explosiveness. So frozenness and explosiveness, just think about victims in war or sexual assault, or just such tremendous rage or terrorism and so on. So they go from that state of frozenness, but if it's released too fast, they go into a state of explosiveness, or what he calls rage. What we really need to do is teach people slowly to kind of move out from the frozenness by resetting the nervous system with the rhythm of gentle contraction and expansion, slowly moving with the body towards a state of awareness. So I think I'll show this to you next week in the video, but if this would be a nice model for, well, the Slinky is one model he gives, but another model would be this device. You've seen this, kids play with this, schools and stuff, and buy this at the Science Center. You see how the nervous system can expand, then contract, expand. So if you look at somebody in a state of frozenness, of trauma, it probably look, I know it's not coming out clearly on my screen, but it probably look like that, they're frozen. But what happens if you release too much energy of the traumatic state, you get into states of explosiveness. These are extreme states, severe contraction, extreme expansion. What we're looking to do is help a person slowly kind of move out gently by slowly teaching them to move again, move their nervous system again, to start regulating to that type of state. There's the normal rhythm of life. It looks like that. Trauma looks like that. Explosiveness kind of looks like that. Now, if you remember that little video I played of that dog last week, remember that dog that was in the shelter and he was healed? Well, the dog was in a state of trauma. Remember his sad looking eyes, lack of movement. When dogs are traumatized, they don't move they don't wag their tails. When a dog wags his tail, it's an expression of pleasantness, of joy, not joy, but just of liveliness, engagement. So if you notice that it took him many, many months of feeding the dog, of petting the dog, of softening his voice. And you started seeing that dog slowly move out. He would move out of his kettle, and then he would get food from his hand, and then get food from the bowl and from the dish. And then eventually he got the animal to run around with other animals. And you see the animal just kind of running around. But you can't take that animal from frozenness to playfulness, because you can't move from the state of frozenness to a state of explosiveness. It would be too overwhelming. Make sense? Any questions? Any questions on that? But I think you get the example. Yeah.
Is there a place in the brain for the amygdala? I mean, specific place?
There's a place for the amygdala when we're in extreme danger, but not after the danger. The problem with the amygdala, as we'll see in neuroscience, it's so powerful, it releases adrenaline in the body. It's one of the most powerful hormones that we have, which puts us into super reactivity. Now, if you think about the amygdala, so the amygdala triggers the hippocampus, pituitary gland, and the adrenals, HPA axis it's called, and hypothalamus, it's hypothalamus. And you get like that feeling of like an electric shock in your stomach sometimes when you're scared, goes to your stomach and heart. So that is to get us into a state of extreme reactivity. Immediate, put your arm up and fight, hit the brakes and fight.
So
the problem is that, yeah, go ahead.
It's more like a chemical that the brain releases. It's not really like a part of your brain that is there all the time. Correct.
And see, so why that's so important, the way you described it, is because now we see it's physiological as well. It's not just psychological. So what you think is a mental issue, emotional issue, really becomes a physiological issue. And once adrenaline's running in the body, there's all types of implications. Heart rate goes up, as we saw last week in the chart. You have less digestion, you get stomach aches, sweating, shaking, headaching, tensing up, you name it. Gastrointestinal problems, urinary tract problems, all types of problems emerge from muscle tension, muscle ache. All things emerge from that flow of adrenaline in the body, and it takes on its own reality. And that's because the amygdala let it go.
Can I
Yeah, sure, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
No, so what I want to understand is, I understand how the amygdala releases the adrenaline and the chemicals going. Does the amygdala itself, does it keep going on its own? Is that a separate issue besides what it releases?
It seems to be that the amygdala takes on a new state after trauma. Without help, it does not go back to its previous state.
So in other words, even though
just like the dog, until it's gently moved out of the extreme freeze it's in.
So I'm saying it has nothing to do with, in other words, what I'm saying is what triggered the amygdala initially was that event. Right. So, but once the amygdala gets going, does the amygdala take on like a life of its own, independent of the event?
Exactly. That's exactly what we're saying. That middle brain takes on its own new reality, and it's experienced physiologically by the client, by the victim, forever. According to Levine, forever.
You're saying forever until you can move them out of it. Is that what you mean?
Correct.
Forever?
Until the pattern is
broken.
Until the trauma is released.
What's that?
Until the trauma is released, whatever that.
Until the trauma is addressed and released, but specifically through tracking the sensations in the body to release it, according to Levine. We want to track sensation. It's on the level of sensation, not on the level of what we call psychotherapy.
And if the amygdala was
one at a time, one at a time. Suri and then Pagay. Go ahead, Suri.
The amygdala keeps firing because the trauma is stuck.
Yes.
Like you said, I think it was the first time, not every traumatized person has trauma, because if the trauma gets released, it doesn't get stuck.
Yeah, I mean, somebody heals their trauma, it's released. That's 100% true. Right, that's what we're doing on this course. We're teaching, I'm just giving you the theory before we teach you how to do this. Tonight we're going to start, but what's going on before you're treated. Okay, yeah, Pagit, what are you going to say?
If person where the amygdala works and gets going, if it gets healed, will it happen again the same thing next time it gets into a trauma?
Well, for sure. Once somebody is traumatized in one way, they're more open to more trauma the second time because they've been through it.
He will be open to more trauma than another person.
I would think so. Levine talks a lot about that and others, Francine Shapiro in EMDR also talks about this, that for some reason, even Levine doesn't know why, for some reason, you see, people that have trauma usually have multiple traumas. It's usually not just about a car accident, you'll find. Levine even hints, he says that it seems to be that people are kind of predisposed to trauma once they've had one for more trauma.
So I have sort of like two questions here. Is there such a thing as a person having amygdala active without having experienced trauma, like a condition in life that they have to suffer from?
Yeah, I would say yes, because you see genetically, some people, I believe their nervous systems are predisposed to more amygdala activity.
Okay. Yeah. And so you're saying that a person is always more susceptible to having amygdala reacted by another trauma. Is there such a way as healing it altogether so the amygdala will not?
Yes, that's what we're doing on this That's what we're doing on the program.
Okay, got it.
Okay, let's move forward.
Okay, so I had one question.
Yeah, one more, and we got to move forward.
Yeah. Okay, so you mentioned at the end, like right before the questions, about like the rage factor, if things are open up too fast or too intensely.
Yeah.
So my question was, you also use that like to describe what it would mean to just be open all of a sudden after being in that protective closed state. My question is, number one, I've had that experience with clients where their breakthrough moment was in experiencing extreme rage, which had to pass through their body. They actually needed to go through that within the process of healing through their body. So I'm just curious what your take on that is. Do you feel like that's not a necessary?
Well, cathartic, Levine talks about it, is like cathartic release may not be healing, but there are times where it could be. I would agree with you. The human being is very complex, so some people, but we're kind of used to that image from the movies of somebody going for psychotherapy and then screaming about some trauma they had as a child and being better suddenly. Levine would say most cases will not work out that well, as you saw work out with your clients.
So this is more like really coming from a body level. This is not a cognitive process. It's like the body will start convulsing and my client will become aware, I'm just feeling so much rage.
That's right.
Right now. And then they become aware where that is, and they process whatever piece of their story they can.
Yes.
So that's where it comes out. It's not like it's being specifically stimulated, like, this happened to you, you must have some anger in you, let's find that anger. It's just something that the body has been holding on to like that.
Correct. Yeah. Let's watch Levine talking about it. It's our first video of Peter Levine. All these videos are available on YouTube, by the way. Free source. Now, just make sure everybody needs to be muted because I hear some background noise, okay? Make sure you're all muted after you speak. Go right back to muting. Great. Okay, here we go.
There's no sound.
We're not hearing anything.
Tell me if it's better now. Just give it a second. It's going to start right now, and tell me if you hear it.
We talked about
that good?
Trauma as being a highly energetic
good.
response, right? Tremendous amount of energy. I just happen to have one of the greatest inventions of the 20th century, this slinky. And this represents this, okay, we're just walking and kind of our energy is bouncing like this.
So this is just casually living our lives.
Living our lives, going about, the activities of the day, taking a nice walk on the beach, this kind of thing. Okay, here's maybe we're working out, so we're kind of pushing this a little bit. Now here's where we're threatened, and tremendous amount of energy is mobilized. This wild amount of energy is mobilized. And what happens is when we are overwhelmed, this energy gets locked down. You see, we're frightened of it. The best thing you can do is shut down your metabolism so that you are no longer using oxygen. So that's it. So this energy gets locked down here. And so we step on it. We try to keep it.
It must take a lot of energy to hold that amount of energy
You
down.
better believe it. And that's again why we get these kinds of tremendously painful symptoms when we've been traumatized. Because in a sense, these are fragments of sensory body memory. And what happens in healing trauma is that you kind of bring these elements, these sensory experience together in a coherent way while discharging this energy. And it's not about getting the memory or even the effect of the memory, but of how much energy has been released and cannot be integrated into the organism. And that's the key, is in discharging the energy. Because here, look, here's the bound energy. Now, what would happen if this energy released all at once? It would be tremendously bursting of energy, and it would be chaotic. You see,
I guess that's what happens when they get triggered, basically.
That's right. That's right. When they're reliving the trauma, this energy just goes crazy.
I guess that's why some people end up actually being violent at that moment, or violent towards themselves.
Right. Violent towards themselves or violent towards the other. It is not uncommon for returning soldiers to, in the middle of the night, be attacking, sometimes really hurting or even killing their wives or their spouses with this unbridled rage, because they're experiencing as though somebody were coming to kill them. As far as they know, they're protecting their lives by trying to kill a Viet Cong soldier. Mm-hmm. So the important thing in this process is to find a way to release this energy gradually. What you want to do is create the situation, in this case the play, which allows a little bit of energy to be released. And you see the way it vibrates. And again, you see it vibrating. And again, until the full energy is integrated back within the nervous system, and that, if you like, is what allows the nervous system to reset. Little by little, so that the person is not overwhelmed, and so that they can have re-access their life energy. Because when you're suppressing this energy, you don't have energy to really live. You're not living.
You're using your energy, I guess, to keep it
You're using your
down.
energy to keep it down. So you don't do things that could be exciting or even fun or pleasurable. The trick here is to not deny it, but to not get swept away with it. To feel the anger as physical sensations in the body, because anger almost always goes to power. I'm going to give you an example. You feel your jaw feeling really tight, and you feel your fist. Okay, so I'll say, okay, let's just put all of this aside for a little bit. This stuff that you saw on the TV.
Right.
Okay. So feel your fist.
Okay.
And now, very slowly, just tighten your fist a little bit more.
So actually move into that.
And move into that tension. Just tighten it to a little bit, but just a teeny bit, and then release it a teeny bit. Okay, so again, feeling your fist and very slowly contracting it a little bit more, just minutely, and then releasing it. That's right. And just noticing what happened to your breath and to your shoulders. So that's kind of how we dance with anger. Another thing, you can work with the jaw. Okay, so you feel there's tension in the jaw. So just feel the tension and just play with something like this. Go to the point where there's resistance and then just come back. go to the resistance, and come back.
So again, he strengthens the theory of teaching somebody how to manage their intensity levels. It is not healed through explosive rage or catharsis, as we say in psychology, nor is it healed by hiding in the home under the covers and not engaging in society, back to social engagement. Looking for a slow, gentle release. And if you really think about it, when people have trauma experiences, lack of control of their bodies. I'm either going to rages or I'm shutting down. They can't be with people in society. They can't go to weddings. They can't go to events. They can't enjoy life anymore. They have brought themselves down to the point of that frozenness, and therefore not experiencing their energy in a healthy way. So Levine says what we need to do is first help them gently experience their nervous system again in a way that they can maintain, feel alive again. I got to tell you, a lot of my clients that I talk to about this do feel like they're not alive with their traumas. They're constantly worried about them, and they don't have energy for higher levels of engagement, which could be talking to people, music, laughing, love, joy, creativity. They've lost the energy to do that. It's just being swallowed up by the intense reaction to the trauma in their lives. And of course, there's many gray areas. Not everybody's in severe trauma. We usually see people somewhere in moderate stages of trauma as well. Kind of a mixed bag. So our goal is to help our client renegotiate what has occurred and to gently move out of freeze. As we'll see, freeze could be habits, freeze could be posture, freeze could be bodily tension. We're not looking for a catharsis. There's a therapy in the 70s where people like hit their pillows, It's not really going to heal them because that's just the rage. We're not in control yet. Rather, we seek to restore a sense of healthy equilibrium or balance in the nervous system. We'll be doing a lot of work on habit, posture, and tension coming up quite a bit, actually, because they're all important cues to how the body holds the score from the trauma. So it doesn't have to be just my stomach's hurting or my heart is racing. It could be how I hold myself. It could be my positioning. It could be all types of things that are cues and clues to the traumatic experience of frozenness that they're experiencing. Habit, posture, attention. Another little video from Levine on how he learns to manage sensation. Here we go.
And this is when I was doing mind body. This guy came in, and this is when I was doing mind body work in the 60s. He came in and he was having real jaw problems. His jaw was just rigid. He had TMJ. So I was working with those muscles, helping him to relax the jaw muscles. And then all of a sudden, this image came up. He had wanted to be promoted in his job. And it looked like this other person was kind of making nice with the boss. And so he felt like he wanted to kill this guy, fight. But he couldn't do that, of course. Obviously, he had to stuff it, but his jaw had it. So as he released his jaw, that's when the whole image and his perceived threat from another person, just about a job promotion, but it was perceived threat. I think there are a lot of reasons why we get stuck. Using this simple example of the guy, socially it would be inappropriate. It would have caused him all kinds of problems. So he needed to suppress that anger, and you suppress it with the muscles. This is what Wilhelm Reich talked about, armoring. So you have this unacceptable feeling, so you armor. against that feeling. And in this case, it was in his jaw. And actually the way it came out, he had this image actually of biting this guy. I mean, how primal can you get? Yeah. So, and other reasons are, again, socially unacceptable. And the other thing is we're afraid of the energy that's locked in our bracing responses and our freeze responses. And so the very sensations that will help take us out of the freeze response, back into balance, into equilibrium, into inner regulation, those sensations are frightening often to a person. And so they stop those sensations from happening, but it's the very sensations that will take them out of the freeze response that they're stopping. Maybe this person who was passed over for a promotion, maybe he even starts talking about, that he was really, he just was so upset that that this other person got promoted and that he didn't. And so while he's talking, I see his jaw starting to stiffen. I see his shoulders starting to come up. And then I might say, I'm just wondering if you're noticing what's happening in your jaw or your shoulders just while you're talking about this. We can talk about it. Let's just put the talk about it, just put it to the side for a few moments, and you can come back to it anytime you want. But just see what you're noticing right now in your jaw. Then I might have them do some kind of movements like just opening the jaw till you feel a increase in the resistance, in the tension, then letting the jaw close a little bit, then letting it open a little bit more, and then letting it close. And then again, every time there's a release of activation, a release of energy, just encourage the client. So just noticing those sensations. Maybe they report tingling. Just notice the tingling. Notice if it increases, if it decreases, or if it changes, if it stays the same, or if it changes to something else. So again, it's working with the energy, the activation that's got locked in to those frozen muscles.
So just for an example, I want you to notice yourself in your body right now. Go into your body. Just feel your body right now. Go from the class consciousness, that's prefrontal cortex. Go back to your sensations now in your body, as I had you do last week. Just notice your sensation. Notice any tightening in your body right now. Where are you tight? Where are you aching? Where are you tense in your body? Is it your back, your head, your stomach, your shoulders, your feet? Notice any tension in your body. Just wondering also if you could also notice tension in your jaw right now. Something that without Levine, I wouldn't be aware of so much, of jaw tension. Notice your jaw for a second. I want you to gently open your mouth and go. A little bit of opening. Feel that sensation. And close your mouth again. We don't want to keep it there long. Just let go. As you sit there relaxing, slight movements of your jaw, just see what else you notice in your body. Don't open up too much, just a little opening. Notice the effect when you open your mouth slightly on your chest and your shoulders, your breathing. See, these are things without Levine's insight, it's hard to detect that your clients or ourselves are experiencing from the trauma response. And the fellow that didn't get his promotion is not under severe trauma. He's just angry. But it's that physiological sensation of tension which he maintains unconsciously, even after dealing with his boss. He'll walk around for days with his jaw until he starts feeling TMJ, and I don't know where it's coming from. You understand this? So it's always important to explore with clients. So what are you feeling right now? What's going on? Where are the sensations? This is, again, something us as psychotherapists were never trained to do, really, in detail. But now with somatic experience, we do with our clients. I'll ask my clients, when I'm talking to them about anxiety or depression or anything, where are you feeling it right now? Where do you feel your anxiety right now? And I want you to notice that response in your body. Let's go there for a moment. Someone says, I'm feeling like this, you can see me, like this tightness here. Okay, good. So just notice that for a minute. Sit there with your tension in your chest. And in fact, put your hand on it. So everybody put their hand on their chest for a second. If you can, you're confident. Put your hand in your chest. Just kind of feel that sensation. Just get in touch with your lungs, your heart, your breathing. Just notice that soothing sensation of placing your hand upon it. Just kind of watching it. A wonderful thing. This is what Levine is teaching as well, is that you don't have to necessarily address one's anger or fear. The amygdala and its related reactions within the body become part of the nervous system. They're equally as present as our thoughts. And we simply just have to address the sensations and not the thoughts. Let's deal with each level on its own first, beginning with the bodily sensation. Then eventually we can go up to the thoughts. But it's the actual embodiment of the trauma which is present within us, like jaw tension or heart racing, that's actually influencing us upwards towards our thoughts. Not what we usually think, that our thoughts are affecting our bodies. Our bodies have a mind of their own, so to speak. They're affecting what we're thinking. Until we address that mechanism, we keep on thinking about it. Hang in there, we have a lot to do. We're just getting started, okay. So as I mentioned before, I just put it in a slide, but we've talked, again, 3 stages of our nervous system, according to the polyvagal theory of Stephen Porges we learned about last week. A healthy human being is on the top of that ladder on the right. It's a ventral vagal. I feel connected to the greater world. I feel connected. That's in me. When I'm in danger, I go down that ladder, down the rungs of the ladder. I go into the orange or yellow. That's my sympathetic nervous system, my fight or flight mechanism. That's the amygdala. I'm in danger. I need to fight or run, fight or flight. And then if that's not successful, eventually I go down to the dorsal vagal state. I can't cope. I'm in collapse. Think about people, perhaps our parents in this workshop, even you, I don't know, some people might be at the age of, you might be survivors as children or in DP camps, I'm not sure, or your parents may have been survivors of the Holocaust. And just think about, living life in Europe before the war, before the Germans invaded. Social engagement, life in Poland was fine, fight or flight, running for your life, and then hiding in the forest for a few years, or being in a concentration camp, total freeze and total shutdown. So imagine that you understand that metaphor, you just go down that ladder into the dorsal vagal, I can't cope, total not feeling, so to speak, existence, kind of like being a ghost. What we need to do is, and this is unfortunately, we weren't prepared for this as a society 75 or so years ago after the war. No one knew how to help these people. There wasn't like teams of social workers and somatic therapists and EMDR professionals helping people from the camps and from the war in general, or from Russia for that matter, wherever the trauma came from. People didn't know what to do. Most survivors just kind of buried their experience in surviving at work. They didn't speak English necessarily, they had to just eat. So they went to work and they got sent by HIAS to different places in the United States, Canada, Brazil, and around the world, Israel. And no one helped them get out of their freeze. And their children have suffered terribly. If you're a child or a grandchild of survivors, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, trauma is passed down intergenerationally, and a lot of it had to do with the freeze of the grandparents who might have been Holocaust survivors and never explored or experienced, never got to heal from it, and never learned how to express their feelings and so on, and the pain that their children feel then passed down to their children as well. Okay, so let's work with Levine. Now we finally really deeply understand it. What do we do? So if you could please, you could take out the book. I asked everybody to buy this book. That doesn't come out well on my screen, but oh, there we go. Thank you. It's called Healing Trauma by Peter Levine.
If you hold it a little bit further away.
Oh, is that where it's? Yeah, I don't know, because I'm on the special screen. It just blurs it, but you know it. So Necha on the top there is hiding, called Healing Trauma. Okay. And I want you to get this book. If you don't have it, don't worry. I'm doing all the work on the book with you over the next few weeks. But get the book, Healing Trauma by Peter Levine. And so what Levine has done in this little tiny book, it's a masterpiece, is he showed the 12 steps out of the freeze, basically, how to get somebody out of the traumatic experience. And we're going to start doing them tonight and have a lot of fun with it because it's really interesting work. So the first of his 12 steps, let's call it, 12 phases of healing. The first step is in the group of what we call preparatory, the preparatory phase, is feeling safety and containment. Feeling safety and containment. This is really, really important. And there are 12 somatic exercises. Let's take a look. If you remember again that trauma is a breach, we learned this the first week. Trauma is a breach in the protective barrier against stimuli leading to feelings of overwhelming helplessness. So it just reinforces this idea that those who are in freeze feel helpless. They don't know what to do about it. So Levine's book actually describes 12 ways out of that helplessness, out of that frozenness. And the first is safety and containment exercises, what we call reducing dissociation. Then after that, I'll just go through them briefly, but I'm not going to describe them in detail. We go into grounding oneself and centering oneself, building resources, and then the real work takes place in stage number 4 is tracking sensations, tracking activation, and we move into step number 6. Step number 6 is pendulation, moving in and out, restoring the nervous system, moving in and out of states of trauma. The fight response, natural escape versus anxiety, strength and resilience versus collapse, uncoupling response, reorienting, and settling and orienting. Don't get overwhelmed. We're just going to start from the beginning and do everything slowly with it. Safety and containment. What is that all about? We have to find safety or help our clients find safety within their own bodies and help them establish boundaries. So if you notice what I said before, that trauma is the breach in the boundary which protects a person against overstimulation. So I guess it's more understandable in sexual molestation where the body was infected, being attacked on the street in a fight, being hit, robbed from, attacked, those type of sensations. Person loses that boundary. It was like a boundary breached. If you look at society in general, so we all have a boundary. So if you go to the bank or any store, you don't walk up to somebody in their face 3 inches away and talk to them, do you? No, you have a boundary. Person should be in our society an arm's length away minimally, I guess. Let's just make it up 18 inches or something, or 3 feet or something for that nature. You have to have some space from people to feel comfortable. Only in intimate sense, our children or loved ones we embrace closely, but most people in our society we have a certain space from. That means there's a boundary around us, a container which protects us, right? We live within boundaries. So going back to the theory of the breach in the boundary, so people with trauma, which probably most of us with traumas, may feel broken boundaries. We don't have a sense of containment. We blur the line between self and other. Others come into our lives, they go too deeply within us, we feel uncomfortable, and we don't feel we can get close to people because we're not safe with them. Talk about social anxiety and things like that. So the first exercise Levine teaches is learning to get into our container. And it happens on a very physiological level. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to remind ourselves that our soul and mind is actually in our bodies. Remember that trauma is also defined by dissociation. When people leave their bodies, there's so much inner tension, they're like walking around spaced out like ghosts. They're not even here. So that might be the state some of our clients. I want to tell you an amazing story about this work. I have a client who came to me from Borough Park. He's coming to me just 2 or 3 times. And he had a lot of trauma, sexual trauma. He was molested as a kid twice and other things, and very anxious and unhappy type of person. Anyway, so I just taught him this exercise alone, and he said it was life-changing. Just learning how to get back into one's body without any talk therapy for months and months and months got him right back out of dissociation into his body. Doesn't always work, but let's learn a bit about it. So the first thing you want to do with your clients is make sure that they're in their body. So one exercise we can do is just some tapping. So first of all, before you do the tapping, just kind of notice yourself for a second. Notice yourself. I'm assuming people are in severe trauma in this workshop. Perhaps some of you are. I don't know. Dissociation would be a sense of you're kind of spaced out. You're not really here. You're not part of the discussion, maybe. You're feeling very uncomfortable, maybe. So the first exercise is just notice yourself. How do you feel? Do like a scan of your nervous system right now. It's always the baseline to move. And then just start some tapping. Let's see how you feel. Just tap a little. So one simple exercise, keep on tapping. Just tapping your hand. And you'd say, this is my hand and it belongs to me. This is my hand and it belongs to me. Okay, then you move. This is my forearm. This belongs to me. I'm in my body right now. This is my body. I'm in it right now. My elbow. This belongs to me. Helps me move my arm. I'm just going to move around. And this is my shoulder. This belongs to me. Just tapping yourself into your body. Okay, so the exercise is, this could take a whole 10, 15 minutes of tapping. Someone just taps through parts of their body. Tap their head. This is my head. This is my jaw, chin, shoulders. This is my legs or my knees. Just tapping, tapping, tapping. This is not the EFT tapping, which I'm teaching you later on, a few weeks from now, but it could be connected on a certain theoretical level. It brings the person right into their body. So when I meet with people that have trauma, I often start with these types of containment exercises, with the tapping and tapping. There's different ways of doing this. He recommends that the client could do it in the shower. In the shower, when you have a nice hot, strong stream of water, have them have the water touch their shoulders and say out loud, this is my shoulder, it belongs to me. Any, sensation, the back, the head, the arms, a stimulation of sensation. In dialectical behavior therapy, you do things also like this, where you'd have a person take a brush, bristles of a brush, and kind of brush their hands a little quickly. It's a sensation that brings them back. I've had other clients where I've had them hold ice in their hands with a bag. Any type of intense sensation will bring a person back to their body. That's not Levine's work, this is DBT work, but also good. So a bit of tapping, that might be your first session. Just sit there tapping your client for a few minutes and give them the homework to do this when they go home during the week every day. Spend a few minutes kind of tapping or doing the shower exercise and going back into their bodies. Now, once you do that, that's part A. Part B is intensifying that a bit. So once you get the tapping, then you could do some deeper working, deeper into your body. So you have your bicep, you can kind of squeeze in, or your tricep into the muscle. This is my tricep, and muscle is a part of me. It helps me lift my arms, and this is my forearm. So you go from just the tapping superficial, getting deeper and deeper into the body. Okay, yeah. There's a question. Michael, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to ask if specifically the tapping motion is necessary for this exercise, or if it can be more of a touching, more of a sweeping, a different type of tactile connection besides tapping. You just mentioned the bristle brush, so maybe there are different forms of it. But if the way Levine is presenting it, if tapping specifically is, or if it's just touching in different manners.
He just describes it as tapping. I guess you can play around with it. But the main point is just to come into your body. So touching lightly gets you in there. Sometimes a little light touching might not get you there. You have to be a little more aggressive, a little more. Just
and it does seem like the next stage of that is to move into something we were just talking about, squeezing muscle, manipulating more. So my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is that it doesn't have to be tapping necessarily, but it should be some sort of contact on that level where it's not super light, it's noticeable, but it's also not too overwhelming and intense, moving into more intensive
That's right.
visceral things. Okay.
That's, from light to more visceral. That'd be correct. Any other questions?
Yes. Do you talk to yourself while you do this? Do you have your client talk to themselves? This is my
Oh.
hand. Like you.
Yeah, they could, yeah. If the verbal cue works, some people just talk into themselves in their head. They don't have to do that verbally, but the verbalization tends to intensify the experience.
Just to verbalize your body part, nothing about how to feel good and how to.
Right, we're not
positive
going
things. We're not doing any positive.
Not doing therapy on the muscle. We're just noticing it.
Noticing it and
coming back to ourselves.
Mm.
His trauma is a loss of self, so we're coming back and coming back. Now, what amazed me about this client, I didn't even expect this, but this guy came back really in a much better state. My second meeting, just from the tapping, nothing else. I did no therapy about his trauma. Just tap into your body. Go, oh, so relieved. Thank you. It was great. I was like, what? I was surprised. It doesn't always work like that. And sometimes just the tapping brings the person back to themselves. They've lost themselves. Which really, if you want to summarize a traumatic experience, it's the loss of self. Called the loss of the protective boundary and so on and so on. It's just the loss of myself. I'm not here anymore. I'm just worried and overwhelmed and these horrible sensations that walk around, headaches, stomach aches, backaches, fear, panic attacks. It's really just the loss of self. So tapping may be a way just to get back to oneself. Try it and see if it works. Okay, next. So the next exercise that Levine talks about is actually making a container and containment work. This we could spend months or weeks and hours on for sure, doing these container exercises. And they're all powerful. So here's a container exercise, which is taking a yarn or string and seat yourself on the floor. Notice your body and boundaries. Place the string to delineate boundary and assert this boundary when needed. Here I just happen to have a big string. My wife and I do somatic work. Here it is. It's a massive rope in my mouth. Okay, you can see it. It's a good, I don't know, 25 feet. And what I'll do with my clients, the bigger space here, I will have them stand in the middle of the room. And I'll have them say, take this rope, and I want you to make a boundary around yourself. Now it's on the floor. I'm just holding it up in the air for you to see it. It'd be a big boundary, and I use the full 25 feet probably. And I'll say to them, listen, this boundary might be close to you. It may be far away from you. And I want you to make this boundary around you. Sit within the boundary for a few minutes. So I'll say, again, you always want to take baseline when you're treating people. How do you feel right now before the boundary exercise? Notice your body. Always go notice your body. Notice what's going on. You describe it to me. Get them in touch with what we call baseline, so I can measure what happens when I do all types of work with them, intervention. So notice your body, notice the tension. Now, people with trauma, sexual trauma, other types of trauma will have a lot of bodily sensations in their bodies all the time. It's like, just go there for a few minutes, feel it, it's okay. And now what I want you to do is put this rope around you, big rope. And I want you to create a boundary that you feel comfortable with. Go ahead and do that. So we'll go ahead and make that rope boundary. Why don't you could sit in it, stand in it. You know, your clients are not prepared to sit on the floor as adults usually. They could just sit in a chair within it. They could stand in it. Doesn't really matter. But I want you just to sit there with that boundary and just notice the boundary. The feeling of I'm contained by it. I'm protected by that boundary. And you know, in a boundary, no one can come in unless you invite them in or give them permission to enter. So that's your space. It's all yours. Go ahead and just enjoy it, experience it. Now, it's interesting to know that some clients will make big boundaries, some will make small boundaries. Some will say, I don't want a boundary, which is an interesting reverse of that as well. But it always has some impact on the nervous system, noticing the sense of containment or protection. Another way I do this, which is a little more practical to give adults a chance to practice all the time, is I want you to notice a boundary around you right now. Picture yourself in a bubble, in a translucent plastic container, like a big ball that you're inside. Like you see people roll on balls inside in the park. Imagine yourself in one of those balls. this layer of protection all around you, above you, beside you, below you, behind you. Just sit there for a moment. So let's try it together. Everybody notice their bodies for a minute. Let me give you 30 seconds. Go to your body. Notice yourself. Where are you tense? Where are you aching? Where are you activated? How's your breathing? Tense, calm. Kind of measure your tension. From 0 to 10, how intense is the discomfort? Is it 10? I doubt it. Is it 6? Is it 5? Or a little bit, is it 2? That's another baseline measurement. Just sense it. Sense yourself right now. Good. Now imagine a boundary around you. Put a boundary around you, an imaginative boundary. Now, it could be, let's say, a few feet away from you, around you, it could be close to you. Just put that boundary around you. Feel the wonderful sense of containment. Be contained by the boundary. In front of you, above you, below you, beside you, behind you. No one can come in without permission. It's your boundary. Yours to protect. Notice the boundary and notice the sensations in your body right now as you think about the boundary. Notice your breathing. Your jaw is tight, open your mouth a little bit. Notice the boundary. Pay like dual awareness to your sensations and to the boundary. Notice what happens. How are you feeling? Back to the boundary. Okay, let's come back to the room. But you see the example there. You put them into a state of relaxation, which is not really the intent, but what we're really focusing for is a shift in the nervous system to perception of boundary. What was broken during the trauma was it was a breach in the protective barrier. Now you're resetting it imaginatively, and you're getting your nervous system to be in sync with that perception that you're protected again. Boundary.
Last question?
Yeah.
So my understanding is from these two exercises that they're so far, there's a dual problem we're trying to solve. One is, like you said, loss of self. So I need to get back in touch with myself. And the other is loss of boundary. And I'm trying to get back in touch with the boundary. Are we saying that those two things are two separate things that happen? Or
self and boundary are interdependent. They're interdependent.
So you're saying when I lose my boundary, I lose my sense of self. Also, they really happen together?
Exactly. These are unconscious realities. They're interconnected. Sense of self and boundary. You know, I exist, and I'm different from you because I have a boundary. My boundary is my skin. I don't exist without a boundary.
But what you're saying is, if I would do the tapping, let's say, I would just regain the sense of self. That would be that would be helpful, but insufficient because I haven't dealt with the boundary yet.
Well, that's for helping dissociation. It's also feeling a sense of self again. This is all interlinked. These things. These are all imperceptible realities at a certain level, but sometimes you can kind of get in touch with them. So,
I just want to understand insight that I think some people might appreciate. It's a halacha. Halacha by tefillah is you're supposed to be in an enclosed place, not to be out in the world somewhere.
Correct. When you pray, Jewish law, you're supposed to be in some place or by some place.
or up against the wall, that there should be
Close to the wall.
some,
Yeah, beautiful.
some
There's a
sense of
sense of,
containment.
yeah, why not?
What I felt,
Could be, it speaks to this.
what I felt when I made the boundary in my imagination, I felt the story that happened when somebody attacked me. It came.
You still there?
Yes.
Oh.
I said it happened the opposite. When I close my eyes and I'm in the room, and in the same room which it happened that somebody attacked me even verbally, as I put a shield on like the boundary, I saw the person coming. Like it came up the story, like the opposite. What?
Well, now that you've opened it up, what else are you noticing in your body right now?
No, I got more relaxed, but the story came back.
Story came back initially. Yeah, it might. It might. Now you have to realize that that if that response would happen, with my client, like it just came out right now, I may go back to the tapping. I may do all types of other relaxation things. If the memory, it's a great point. If that memory, if that containment would trigger memory on an intense level, I would understand that I moved too quickly with my client. Make sense?
Yes.
Very good. I'd move in other directions. So that's a great segue to the next direction. There are other ways of feeling more relaxed and contained, teaching clients to do so. I'm going to bring something out here. It's called a Smovie ring. You know what? I think I have to change how my screen exists. I hope I don't get knocked off here. 1 second. I did get knocked off. Let's try it again. I want to, I'm going to unblur. There we go. Now you can see. I have to unblur. Here's something called the two Smovie rings. And Levine talks about, I'm going to spell it for you so you can see what they are. They're called Smovie. Smovie. Here are the Smovie rings. Levine uses them a lot, practices the use of them, teaches people to use them as well. A little more advanced, but now that you brought this up. So if you came to office, Yosef, and I saw that anything I did overwhelmed you, which it did to some level, I would go in a different direction. I would slow it down from containment back to just sensation. So here's a Smovie ring. So the Smovie ring, some of you go like that with your hands. I'm sure you can hear that. There's these rings, there's these balls inside, and there's kind of this ridged edge. And as the ball passes through it, it also has a place where you hold it, and the sensation of the balls move through your hands. And there's some neuroscience to this, that the sensation of the hands is maybe one place to stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system. There's different places but we don't really know what we think. But there's no question about it that swaying of arms, that really you do this by, it'd be hard for me to stand up here, be standing up, going like this. I'd be swaying back, a little shuffling.
How do we know when to use this?
Okay, this is a little more advanced in my work with clients. What I will do is I will learn from my clients' responses if I need to do this. That's the answer to your question. So if I do a containment exercise, there's a lot of repetition coming up of his thoughts. I wouldn't say obsessive, but intrusive type of thoughts of trauma. I would realize that it's too deep in his nervous system to address through the containment. I would just do some more movement exercises to just loosen up his nervous system. That's all. Or sometimes I'll just start my session. Let's just do some Smovie ring movement. But this can be done without, these Smovie rings are very expensive, like $169. Why they're $169, I have no idea. Only one person makes it. But I will do other things. You just take your arms for a second. Why don't you just pull back from your computer? I'm not going to stand up because it's not easy for me to stand with the camera. Just take your arms, put your arms next to your chair for a second. Let them hang like a monkey. Now, first of all, before you do this, notice your body. Always notice your body. How does your body feel? How does your body feel? Tense, aching, nervous? Are there certain parts which are more activated right now? Kind of notice your body. Notice your breathing. You guys have to mute yourselves, please. There's some background noise. Okay? Just notice yourselves. Notice yourself. You could do the standing up if you want to turn your camera off, or you can sit. Just take your arms and kind of, it might be hard with the chair. Just sit forward like you're sitting on the edge of your chair so you have more space. Maybe that'll make it easier. Just take your arms and just swing your arms. Now making an X at the top. You go forward if you don't hit the chair. Back. Get into the swing of it. Feel like your wrists and arms and hands are like weighted and pulling you forward as you move your hands. You go side to side. You don't have to do this if you're not comfortable or it's inappropriate. Don't worry. Do it. Keep moving. You could take 2 bowls or 2 cans of food and do this also. Some weight in the hand, some sensation in the hand. Okay, slow down. Just give you a little introduction.
That is that it hurts.
I don't do it. I don't do it.
If you're saying, well, it hurts my shoulders.
I won't do it. I'll stop. I'll say do a more gentle movement. Don't swing. Just do little. Just take these rings and just feel the sensation. You don't have to do big movements. You have to be aware that our clients may have physical problems, joint difficulties, all types of arthritic problems, and you have to be sensitive to them. But again, Levine recommends an exercise like that, a modality like that, get the person into sensation. There's something soothing about that rhythmic type of movement also. There's something soothing about it. Remember that puppy dog that was traumatized, gentle petting and playing with. You're just warming up the nervous system. Yes, Schneer, go ahead. You have to unmute.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm Yisrael. I'm just on my son's Zoom right now.
Oh, okay.
ERP, like exposure response stuff. Is that bad for trauma? Is that ever have a negative place with trauma?
Well, you bring up a whole topic. So I will be teaching you later on in this course, when we finish somatics, we're going to move into something called EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization reprocessing. I'm not teaching you how to do it. I'll teach you what it is, and I'll teach you how to do tapping. It's more of a, you have to be licensed, so to speak, for EMDR, but I want to teach you the theory because everybody can learn the theory of it. But that therapy is more into exposure. You don't mean ERP. You're referring to ERP when we treat anxiety and OCD primarily. You're talking about just exposure therapy. I think that's what you mean. So Levine, there's a big debate. Peter Levine does not like at all exposure therapy to trauma. He does not agree with it. EMDR, which is a very famous, very well studied, and so on, is really much into, EMDR is really into go right into that trauma, flood the nerve waves and your thoughts and your thinking and your feelings of trauma, and just get through them as you do eye movements. Levine does not like it at all. I'm a practitioner of EMDR. I slowed down my EMDR, work with people when I learned somatic experiencing. I think it's much more effective. However, EMDR can also be effective.
Right.
I'm presenting Levine. There's other ways to do this.
Because there's probably times for both, right? It's good. They each kind of have their place.
They each have their place, but our students in this class don't know what it is yet. So let's hold off a little bit till we get there. But Levine's approach, it's Yisrael, right? Levine's approach is not to flood going back to memory of trauma. He doesn't think it's helpful. Any other questions? Well, let's go back to the point. The point here is now we're dealing with containment. Now we're dealing with, now I just put this slide in as well, just to feel, you look on the left, it's a sense of I amness, I exist. I'm back to my body, I'm back to myself, where I can feel safe in my body. That may come along with feeling respected, loved, unique, valuable in life, but for sure that I amness of my own existence is lost during my trauma. And if you ask trauma victims, they probably tell you they don't feel safe. They don't feel loved by the world, for sure. They don't think they're so unique. They're not valued. They don't feel like they're alive. Or some gray area in between. It's also a loss of I canness. I can do something. I can create, engage, explore, enjoy, laugh. I can make mistakes and play. That gets lost when there's no boundary. There's no self. Without a boundary, there's no self. What defines biological existence is the cell, the most basic building block of every organic piece of organic body, physiological self, is that there's a boundary around the cell. When there's no boundary, there's no self. There's no I exist, I can, I am. We're giving that back to our clients simply by exercising the boundary and exploring it again and feeling it again and thinking about it again and asking them to walk around during their day, noticing that boundary and container as well. Get in touch with it. For example, somebody may feel anxious during the day or re-traumatized. So I have them work with their boundaries. So ask them week by week, did you put up your boundary? Did you employ this technique of noticing boundary when you start feeling overwhelmed? Did you look at that boundary again? You want to reintroduce. Again, you're introducing them during session, having them spend time with us afterwards, practicing these things. Again, it's all in the book. So with my clients, I get most of them to buy this book. I'll tell them week by week, we're going to go through the book together. We're going to try these exercises together. Some may respond, some may love it, some may say to you, I didn't feel anything necessarily. It all depends. It all depends on each client. But I know for a fact, we do need to do some grounding with them, which is coming up next.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So let's talk about a minute about enmeshment. When emotionally, let's say a child is enmeshed with the parent and they can't they have a sense of self, sense of boundary. So that's not necessarily trauma, but it could create a lot of the same sensations. Is that correct?
Yes, it could be.
So I'm saying, so will this approach help as well, or that's a completely different way to deal with that?
That's a whole different area, enmeshment, emotion.
We're not touching on that.
No, not now.
Okay.
Phase 2. Now we've already done 1, we're going to do 2. 2 is what he calls grounding and centering. Now, I have to be honest with you, I don't always do all the containment exercises with clients. It depends the type of trauma, but I usually do some form of grounding and centering. Let's just take for an example, if our trauma level from 0 to 10, 0 is I'm feeling fine, I'm not traumatized. Then there's different levels of trauma. So usually when trauma is like 7, 8, 9, 10, towards the top of that ladder, then we're usually dealing with more dissociation, more leaving the body. And therefore I know, based upon the history they've given me, to start with more containment exercises and so on. So it all depends. So not everybody needs containment for every trauma. Something you get to learn when you deal with your clients. The more severe ones do need that. Okay. Suri had a question. Yeah, go ahead.
Just off topic, but can you send us these slides now?
These slides are on, I cannot do that, no. They're all on the PowerPoint.
Yeah, but the PowerPoint you had didn't have some of the slides.
This PowerPoint that you're showing tonight has all these slides.
But you didn't send, you sent us a link to this?
Every week, yes, every week. I don't send
say.
these. Every week, well, I'm glad you're mentioning because that's for you. Every week, you go to the same exact website page. It's the resource page. I don't email this to you. I email you the video each week. I don't email you the slides. So the slides are found on, I'm going to post it, torahpsychology.org /
See that?
Mind, body, resource. Yeah, if you go to this link every week, I don't email it to you. You just got to take it right now, copy and paste. It's right there for the
Right.
first 2 weeks.
Resource 3.
Yes, resources 3. Just copy that link, click on it, it'll go to your website and keep it.
Okay,
It's
but it
something-
only has week 1 and week 2. It doesn't have.
Correct, because I haven't posted the PowerPoint until I give the class, because it may change during the class.
It just makes it easier because I write notes on the
Yeah.
PowerPoint.
I can't do that because I change sometimes PowerPoints in the middle. Okay, we got to move forward. So,
Okay.
I have one question, if I may.
no, I'm sorry, just hold on, I got to move forward, okay?
Yeah,
Maybe
okay.
a little bit later. Just hold on to it.
Uh-huh.
Just write it
Okay.
down. Okay.
Okay.
So the next thing is grounding and centering. So grounding and centering is very important because these are resources. These are somatic resources. And they're good for all types of therapy. They're very powerful. Because whether your client has trauma or just anxiety, they all need to just ground themselves in their bodies. And so here's a little bit of a grounding exercise. Now, before you do it again, notice your somatic self, notice your body. Notice your body again. Feel the tension. Feel the discomfort if you have. Notice where you may be activated. Okay. Now, if you're sitting on a chair, I'll just assume you're sitting on a chair, not a couch, and your feet are touching the floor. Where I've learned for certain people, they curl their feet up. So maybe advisable to put your feet on the floor now if you're sitting on a chair, if you can. And I want you to notice your feet. Feel your feet. Feel the connection point between your feet and the floor. Feel your feet sinking into the ground, deeper and deeper. That gravity's pulling you down. Your feet are rooting in the floor like trees, sinking into the ground. Notice the connection point between your feet, your shoe, and the floor. But the more you work with your clients, the more detail you have them explore, the deeper they go into a grounding exercise. So it's not just feel your feet on the floor, feel different parts of your feet, how they touch the floor differently with different levels of pressure. Just notice that for example. Now notice your seat. Notice your seat. Feel this wonderful force we're not conscious of called gravity, pulling your body into the seat, below you. Notice yourself sinking into your chair. A little more deeply. It's that feeling of sitting down, and specifically pay attention to the meeting point between your body and the chair. What's inside and what's outside. Feel your seat where you're sitting. Feeling your feet on the floor. You're feeling your seat. And notice your back touching the back of the chair. That's right, sit back. Notice your back touching the back of the chair. You're feeling your feet touching the floor. Feeling your seat pulling you down into your chair. You notice the chair holding your back up, touching it. Feet, seat, your back. And notice your breathing. What's happening to your breathing? You may want to take a deep breath in. You want to just explore how breathing works. through the nose, out through the mouth. Take a breath. Also think of a very positive image. Call it safe image. Safety place. It could be, think of a park right now. That's my favorite get to go out, place to go is a park, trees, and fields, kids playing. You might want to go to the beach. You might have your own place you like going to. Just kind of think about that and think about all the sensations of being in the park, walking on the park, on grass, smelling beautiful scents from trees and from flowers, hearing the sounds of birds and children playing, feeling the sunshine on your head and your arms, face. Notice your breathing. Notice your back. Notice your seat. Notice your feet. Notice your breathing. Just notice yourself now. And imagine sitting with a boundary around you, a bubble. Safe inside, protected by that boundary. Nothing can come in without your permission. People, children, problems, pressure. Noticing your feet, seat, back, breathing. The park, the boundary. You can slowly come back to the room, open your eyes. So that was a grounding exercise. You could add wiggling your toes, noticing your feet. But mention the word notice. You're noticing. You're just exploring grounding sensations in the body. Now your clients, well, before I even go there, you could do the standing also. That sense of grounding. Do it sitting. However the client feels comfortable is what you do with them. So it's a great thing to do with people. Now, the question may come up, if they express that thinking about their feet, seat, back brings more anxiety, or trauma, you say, well, where does your body feel relaxed right now? There's different ways to ground. I'm just taking you through a formula, a script, so to speak. But it could be that, your client's really activated and this is very hard for them, but that's fine. And if that's true, so where do you feel grounded? Can you please tell me, where do you feel grounded, right? I know where you feel tense, but where do you feel grounded in your body? seat? Is it your back? Is it your elbows maybe feel grounded? You just never know. But for sure, either way, if I even go in that direction, I know I'm bringing my clients back into a sense of groundedness. And of course, I added the container exercise in part 1 of tonight as well. Now, if they say to you, I don't feel grounded anywhere, I go even further. I say, can you look at an object in front of you right now? Some object in the room. It could be my whiteboard, this is my office. It could be, I have a coat hanger that looks interesting. It could be the picture. If you're at home on video, it could be a tree outside the window or a picture of somebody that's pretty, something's beautiful, family picture, whatever it might be. Just look at it now for a moment. I'm going to ask everybody here, look at an object in front of you. Pick an object. Something pleasing, something nice. It could be a doorknob. It could be anything that's interesting to study, to look at. But just kind of notice that now for a moment. Notice that object. Notice its stability. Notice its textures. Notice its materials. Notice the colors of the object. Think about the purpose of that object. What is the purpose of that object? What does it do? Just notice it. It fills a purpose in your room. Okay. So that's what I'll do with my clients. I'll have them, that's just a mindfulness technique. I'll have them describe something. We learned a little bit about that last week. We'll do more of that in the future weeks. There's a part of the brain called the insula, which is able to describe sensations in the body. We've been doing a lot of insula-based work tonight. What's in my body? There's other parts of the brain, the descriptive brain, which tends to bring our clients or people more into a state of emotion regulation. So mindfulness, which is just really a fancy word for concentration, and specifically I concentrate and I describe something, and I understand its purpose, are just states of meditation, mindfulness, and it really tends to clear ourselves from emotions. So when we're in our descriptive brain, we're not really in our amygdala brain. Okay, so again, feet, seat back, imaging, breathing. You could add a container to that boundary. And you could also look at objects and kind of describe them as a grounding exercise. Any questions?
How long do you do this?
Just a few minutes with the client. I don't do this every session for long. Sometimes I do a little bit of it. I'm trying to do a little bit of it. I want to get that resource. I want to get the groundedness somewhere in their body. I want them to utilize it. If you're using the resource, I didn't explain it. The resource is something which brings me out of trauma. So that could be a good friend. It could be taking a walk in the park as a resource, playing music, going horseback riding, playing tennis, golf, whatever you want to do. If it's playful and fun, it's a resource. There's also bodily resources. So, if I have you focus on your feet now, which for most people are relaxed, but who knows? And if that's your resource, well, why don't you use that more often? You spend a lot of time talking about your trauma. Well, here's a counterbalance. Here's a resource you could also access in your nervous system and start utilizing. I'd use this as a resource. Let's say I go to a wedding and I'm overwhelmed. I don't know anybody. I'm feeling nervous. So I'll say, where are my feet right now? Where are my feet? Feel your feet on the ground. Feel your feet. Notice it. It's a resource. It's a calming resource. Brings me back to myself. How long do you do it? Sometimes for a few minutes, sometimes for a minute, maybe sometimes a bit longer. But I'm teaching people how to access sensation through containment and groundedness. It's very helpful. Really the key to so much work.
Next question, does it make a difference if you do grounding work before boundary or should you always do boundary first?
It's just intuition. You want to get through some of each of these exercises and see how they respond. You know what? And some people don't respond to containment. You come back to it later. Some people don't respond to grounding, you drop it and move on. You have to play with this. You just gotta know. I'm just giving you a few broad strokes of kinds of exercises you work with. But if you're in that whole range of exercises, you're doing good for them. You're helping them out. Yes, Linda.
Is it possible to get that script that you were just doing? It was really lovely.
I did, yeah, it's right there. I think it's mostly kind of this one.
Sorry, I came in late.
No, there it is. You know, feet, seat, back, breath. I guess I didn't write down image, put an image in there. That's it right there.
Okay, thank you.
And, you know, there's other types of nice, so I don't do this much, but it's fun to do and it's kind of deep. You can stand on your feet, but now that we're sitting, let me give you another proprioceptive exercise, self-regulation. There's like hundreds. You could pull from many different, not just Levine, but there's so much stuff out there. Feldenkrais and all types of therapies that teach this. So just sit in your seat for a sec, notice yourself. Notice yourself. Notice the tension. Notice your breathing. Notice the activation. Whatever it might be, light, medium. Notice yourself. Close your eyes. Actually, keep your eyes open to see me and then close them. What I want you to do is I want you to sway back and forth, but very gently. It's not like this. You're not moving like this, like a clock. You're just moving like literally like 1 degree each way, or, you know, an inch one way. Now, the goal is not intense movement. The goal is noticing movement, studying movement. So what I want you to do is imagine a line right down your nose, cutting your body in half. And that when you turn to the right, you're going on the right side of the line, and the left side. The line is staying straight. So go ahead now, close your eyes and try to go left. I'll talk you through it. Left, but really slowly. Notice your seat. Back, now. Begin to notice your whole body as how it organizes for that movement. What do I mean? There's so many muscle groups contributing. That very, slow it down more, that very gentle movement. Notice where you're sitting. Notice your lower back. I don't want you to just move your head. Try to get your back engaged. So you're really kind of moving from your hips. You think about it. Moving from your hips. Passing through that center point. Notice the center as you pass through. From your hips. Your ribs are engaged in this movement. Notice your ribs. Your middle back, lower back. Upper back is moving. Notice your shoulders. Slow it down. Concentrate on the movement itself. Going through the middle. Back and forth. Through the middle. Okay, you can slow that down and come back. So there's another exercise. It's very grounding. Almost anything you do which focuses inward on gentle movement, feet, seat back, breath, imaging, also containment, but also little tiny movement. This is also like smothering I showed you. It's also like that. Noticing sensations, noticing rhythmic sensations. That's where the healing takes place. It's taking place on a rhythmic level. As you notice yourself through rhythm, slowing down rhythm, slowing down intensity, you begin to regulate your nervous system, feeling better, feel calmer, less tense. You're activating, we saw last week, you have the sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight, fighting with the parasympathetic nervous system, which is rest and relax. One's tensing you up, one's relaxing, one's tensing you up. So our clients, whether they have anxiety, depression, or trauma, have a very active fight or flight mechanism. Very intense. It's all over their body. It's everywhere. So we're going to counterbalance that by grounding them to other sensations. Feet, seat back, other sensations. Containment, sensation. Gentle movements, sensation. Calming sensations. You ever look at little kids soothing themselves after crying? Little light movements. We all know this intuitively. We forgot about it. I had a client who's a lot of sexual addiction, but like really severe trauma from his mother. His mother used to lock him out of the house in the winter for 3 hours without a coat. She'd throw him in the house and lock the door. That's his childhood. And lovely guy, father of children, nice person, just so dysregulated emotionally, which leads to sexual addiction, other addictions. Anyway, so he's seeing me now in this, like I see him on Zoom and he's in a car, sitting in his car. His wife is next to him. And I never did somatic work with him. And I usually do, I'm a couples therapist, I do a lot of couple work. So I was doing couple. I said, wait a second, you seem very dysregulated. I said, what do you notice right now? I noticed the heart's racing. Just like notice that for a minute. Notice that. No, notice that. Just in a few seconds, he went really quick into it. He had the ability to calm down fast. And I said, like, you know, what do you want to do with your body? I want to dance. She started smiling and laughing and like dancing. I just brought out another part of his nervous system which was not active. It's very latent in his nervous system. It's very relieving for him. He started smiling. He's very intense. And he started smiling. You can really access these resources. That's a little advanced. He went a little fast. But you know, his trauma was different than some of the traumas I mentioned, but he was in freeze for about 30 years, basically. So there's all types of sensations we could activate in our client. And you got to be careful with this, because when we're dealing with real severe trauma, sensations are overwhelming. So I don't do this lightly, but I got to get my history. So I'm dealing with somebody with sexual trauma. I'm dealing with somebody who, you know, just was in a car accident type of trauma or whatever. So I know their sensations are probably overwhelming. So I'm much more careful. I go slower, much slower. Just maybe where's my feet? If not, let's look at an object. Let's do some just containment for today. You have to grow with that nervous system, right? You got to see where they're at and move up the ladder slowly with them. Any questions?
I had a sort of a question, sort of a point.
Yeah, you need a slide, but go ahead. Yeah.
If you can comment on this, it seems like a lot of the exercises that we're doing for containment and grounding and other things are, a lot of them are focused on rhythm. And it's bringing me back to what we were talking about as a person has lost the person has lost that normal flow of that sense of rhythm that is inherent in our bodily functions and our breath and our heart rate. That there's a contraction and an expansion, and that's a normal part of living, like Dr. Levine demonstrated with the slinky. So a lot of this is about like in re-engaging with the sensation of rhythm. I noticed that even when we did the part when we put our hands on our chest, even just feeling the sensation of breath and rhythm, which you can't really cease. It sort of brings the
exactly. It's all about rhythm. Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of like rhythm component in each. This is like the component that's tying together every one of these exercises, is that there's a rhythm involved. Why that would be important? Yeah, why that would be important is to reestablish that rhythm of energy flow, if that makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That energy flow, that fancy word energy, I don't know what energy is, but that's just your nervous system. That's life. It's expansion, contraction. It's heartbeat. It's breathing in and out. It's talking, listening. So it's a natural rhythm of life, is to grow and to recede, and to grow and to recede.
Yerida l'tzarech aliyah.
Yerida l'tzarech aliyah, meaning sometimes you go down in order to go up. So this is constant. Well, it's really ritzo v'shuv, if you want to think about it. or mati v'lo mati in Kabbalah. There's different, resources. But yeah, it's like getting close and moving back. So that's the rhythm we're basing. So what we do with trauma victims, we really just gently work with them to reestablish relationship with their bodies and their nervous system. We're not doing a lot of therapy. And in fact, what's interesting to note, in earlier parts of Levine's work, when we do work with people, we don't want to talk about their trauma too much. We don't want to activate too much of those sensations because they're too overwhelming. Say, let's just, for a few moments, if we can, kind of uncouple the thinking. Let's just focus on sensation at first. We try to move away from thoughts. Now, but we'll see later on in therapy, we could reintegrate thinking, memories and images with these sensations. But I'm trying to teach this in a very theoretical way. Stay away from a lot of overthinking about their trauma. Just go to the sensation level. It's really counterintuitive. We're not trained to do this as therapists or anybody, but this is a new skill we have to learn. It's just track and work with sensation. Just go a little, we have a few minutes left. So we talked about building resources. I talked about internal resources. There's also external resources. We'll see some internal ones again, but nature, going out for a walk, family, if they're friendly to you, friends, hopefully the friends are friends because they're friendly. I'm a musician, so I love music. So I play different instruments. I love music is my go-to relaxation resource. People love sports. Just add anything you want here. Walking, going to the park, skiing, hiking, camping, playing, it's adults, tennis. I love tennis too. It's things that I don't do much of, but I love them. But they're definitely, and even thinking about playing tennis for me is very calming. I just like playing tennis. Playing piano, I love doing. So that's just thinking about your resources. Then there's internal resources, my own strength, my agility, creativity, my intelligence, my spiritual practice could be a resource. Exercise, a lot of these things could be utilized. So when I do with my clients, I really kind of go through a lot of things in their lives. So what are your resources? So this friend's a resource, this cousin's a resource, this teacher at school is a resource. Biking is a resource for me. Those types of reasons. What are your resources? What calms you? What is soothing for you? When was the last time you did it? It's part of the therapy, building up resources. So we have the somatic resources. We have all these external and internal resources, which are all soothing. And you think about that ladder again, at Porges' ladder, they're all about social engagement, playing, running, jumping, talking, listening. Going to reintroduce spirituality, it's a tremendous resource. Prayer, davening, meditation. So you build a list of resources with people. So we make a list just on a piece of paper or on their phones. What are your internal? What are your external? Meaning, what can you do alone? What can you do with others? What are they? And how much this week or between our sessions have you done these things? Did you exercise this week? Have you found a gym to work out that you're comfortable with? Have you taken a class in some form of stretching and breathing? Maybe you want to take up your instrument you played as a kid. You had piano lessons 40 years ago. Would you consider playing piano again? That's a lot of fun. That's a real kind of resource for your clients. Giving them the therapeutic resources, also the sociological resources and the environmental resources they can access. We're going to leave felt sense. We'll start that next week. So the last 9 minutes or so, I'm throwing a lot of stuff at you guys, but don't get too overwhelmed. We're going to be reviewing a lot of stuff every week, so don't worry. I know it's all new. But any question so far, anything which I've mentioned, which I haven't explained enough, or you don't understand, or you're confused about, now's your chance.
So if I may, so my initial question was when you were talking about boundaries and you were using the rope and so on. And so my question was that if somebody had different trauma, like somebody experienced neglect or no touching as a child, the boundary is actually not really applicable. It's not really good for them, no, is it? Because if you can't penetrate, you can't get a hug. You can't get what you need. But then you explain other ways of soothing the person. So my question sort of like shifted. So now I understand that you probably could use with that person different type of movements and stuff like that.
Correct.
So basically, boundaries is not the only thing we could use for trauma, right? For different trauma needs different exercise, different things.
Correct.
So you have to judge it by your client, by the person, by the need, by the trauma they had.
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
very well said.
Okay.
Anybody else? No question's a silly question in my classes. I just don't like questions that are off topic. But if you have a question, something you don't understand, please feel free to ask it all over and over again with you.
Yeah, I had a question before. You had said a sentence that when we're in our descriptive brain, we're not in the amygdala brain. Can you explain that further?
Yeah, I point you back to last week's slides, I believe, or the first week's slides. I think it's last week, where there's these two competing parts of the brain. You have one part of the brain is what we call the amygdala. I don't know if I can find those slides now. I'll try to look quickly. But imagine there's different parts of the brain that do different things. Okay? So one part is involved in the fight or flight mechanism to protect you, which is dominated by the amygdala. And the other part of the brain is a part of the brain which enables you to think about things carefully, to describe certain things, whether they're sensations in the body. I'm looking for the slide. Whether the sensations in the body, or they are, describing certain things that are out there in the world. So that's just a part of the brain. So basically, it's the brain. Let's look upon it like a muscle. So whatever I use more of gets activated more of. Here, I found the slide for you. Here it is. So here is the insula, or insula. There's the insula slide right there. Let me see if I can go to slideshow. You'll be able to see it bigger. There we go. So the insula is a part of the brain. If we go back a little bit, we were dealing with the amygdala. One second. Got stuck in this. There we go. Amygdala, well, you don't see a picture, but it's in that brain cell area, the brain area. And then amygdala gets active, gets overactive, and it shuts down the prefrontal cortex with too much activity. So what we want to do is we want to activate other parts of the brain. The part of the brain is called the insula. Further back over there. And the insula is a site of proprioception and interoception. What does that mean? Proprioception is, they ask you to think about where your body is as you sit in the chair. Where's your body? How is it in time and space? In space right now, noticing it. Notice where your knees are, your feet are, your ability. What enables your mind to notice that in your body is called proprioception. My sense of balance also is proprioception. And interoception means I can sense how my nervous system is doing. How am I feeling? Am I tense? Am I relaxed in my body? These are different parts of the brain. And it turns out that that insula of the brain is also connected to something called the cingulate cortex, also known as the ACC, the anterior cingulate cortex. And it is also part of the middle limbic brain. And it's involved in monitoring conflict, emotional regulation, and pain expectancy. And inside the CC, the ACC contains the anterior cingulate cortex, which is the emotion regulation center, right there in the middle of the brain, that green disc. So what neuroscience is telling us now is that we have these, intense amygdala experiences, overactive amygdala. It overwhelms our memory, our hippocampus and cortisol. And what we found in MRI and fMRIs is that the amygdala is very activated and constantly activated within victims of trauma or anxiety, for that matter. And where it gets regulated is in the insula by another part of the brain. So that proves to us Why does mindfulness work? Why does noticing sensation in the body work? Because that insula is active. So really what we're looking at, you know, is, another slide, yeah. What we're looking at again is the competition between two sides of the brain. And the brain's like a muscle, so the more we use the muscle, the bigger it gets. So if we exercise and stay within the amygdala, it becomes dominant as in the brain. If we, however, do grounding, which is proprioceptive, which is interoceptive, noticing my nervous system, which is descriptive at times, if I utilize description, noticing something, I'm actually activating this insula, which tends to regulate and put the amygdala into place. So if you looked at these two competing nervous systems, it's really two competing parts of the brain. It's amygdala or insula, amygdala or insula. So this is just simple neuroscience. The grounding exercises, the containment are all activating insula, which tends to regulate emotion. I hope that answers your question. Any other questions? We can have one more question. We have 2 minutes left. Now, somebody said they didn't get the video. Could you, on the chat, give me your email? The video was sent out either within a few hours after class or within 24 hours. Usually Wednesday night or by Thursday, I send out the video every week. If you do not get it, you have to check your spam box. Certain emails do not get through and I can't see them. So you have to check your spam every week. If by Thursday night you've checked your spam, you've checked your files and nothing came from me, whether Wednesday night, Thursday, then email me saying I did not get the email. That's fine, you can tell me. But it's gonna be there and it's gonna be in spam probably. So, okay, so I got your email. I'm gonna send it out to you now. I do ask, as I mentioned before, you must download the video immediately. It's only up for a week or so. And I've left the videos for 2 weeks since you started the class. 2 people mentioned me they could not download it. Did anybody else have the problem not downloading that video from last week? You couldn't download it. I don't know why, because I looked at the settings on Zoom and it said you can download it. I don't understand why. Did anybody download? Did anybody download it? Raise your hand.
Yes, I did download.
So people did download it. Okay, so I don't know if that's a computer problem. I don't know what that is. If some people can download it, I don't know why people can't download it. I can't figure it out. I don't.
It was harder than usually.
When I went the second time, it downloaded.
Yeah,
that's
I didn't.
right.
Yeah, I don't
First
understand.
time it
I
didn't
tried
work.
several times, didn't download. I don't know what to do.
Keep on trying.
Put it
Try
down
again.
with the
I try. How long
One
is it gonna
person
be
at a
there?
time,
to-
one guys,
Whoa.
one person at a time. Well, guys, one person at a time. Got to mute everybody. Okay, so we have one more question. Simcha, you had your hand up. I don't see you. You want to unmute yourself? Yeah.
No, it was just about the downloading. I raised that I couldn't download it. I was thinking maybe because it's a phone, but I don't know.
Maybe. It could be your phone. That's right. Go to a laptop or have somebody else download on their laptop and save it. But try to get it. I'll leave up week number 2 for another few days. In fact, I'll send tonight again on the email week 2 and week 3 so you can download them.
I'll confirm that.
Thank
I was not
you.
able to download on my phone, but I was able to download on my laptop.
There you go. Get to a laptop to download. All right. Anyway, I will see you guys next week. So your homework, just practice these exercises. We did exercises 1, 2, and 3 of Levine. We have 9 more to go. But practice the grounding, practice containment, and come back next week and tell me how you felt about it. How did it do? But always measure the baseline. Don't just jump in the exercise. How am I feeling now? I'm feeling tense, nervous. Where is that anxiety? Where's the tension? Then do the exercise, and then you could scale it and see what's happening. Okay? Have a great week, guys.
Good night. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, good night.